What is up, Twins friends? Let's do a handful of topics here, basically a news dump video, a Twins 5. Hope you're staying warm out there. It's bitterly cold across Minnesota the last couple days. Figured the trapper hat was appropriate today. But let's start off with a news item. Probably not as front of mind for most people, but this is really kind of the big thing that stuck out to me right away with camp is that Emmanuel Rodriguez, unfortunately, is already injured. According to Bobby Nightingale of the Star Tribune reporting here, Twins prospect Emmanuel Rodriguez sprained his left ankle last week and will be delayed a week or two from participating in camp. So is it that big of a deal that he's going to miss a week or two? No. And this isn't a guy that we were expecting to be competing for like a major league job or anything at spring training. So, he's mainly there to get his work in, get himself set up to hit the ground running in St. Paul this year, being with the Saints to end last season briefly. You can expect him to be in AAA. But still, he's a guy that's been injured so often and missed a lot of time last year. The silver lining is that I don't think he had any ankle issues last year. It was mostly his thumb and his hand. So it's not like we can connect the dots or anything, but it's just sort of a letdown that Emmanuel Rodriguez is injured and is going to be a bit behind the rest of the guys. And as long as we're talking about him, I do want to call out that article down below from Fangraphs where they were trying to come up with a consensus top hitting prospect by peak projected OPS plus you see down there. And Emmanuel Rodriguez actually came up number one in that evaluation. So also a couple other Twins prospects ranked very high on that list by Jordan there at Fangraphs. So I don't want to give that away all the way, but I'll put a link down in the description. You should check that out. So he's a guy to get very excited about. So it's kind of a letdown that we can't kind of let that start getting that fire burning on the Emmanuel Rodriguez hype train this early. But shifting gears to some more positive stuff, a big thing coming out of a lot of the quotes in spring training from Rocco Baldelli, from Carlos Correa, which we have one here, is the changes to the Twins spring routines and how positive those are going in the early going here. And this quote I pulled from an article from The Athletic from Dan Hayes titled Twins Camp Changes, How and Why Rocco Baldelli Restructured Spring Workouts. So this is actually the final quote of that article. There's a ton of great information on the specific details that changed and quotes from Correa and Baldelli. So again, I encourage you to check that out. But basically, Correa kind of points out that there's more structured, there's more required time for the guys to all be together. Instead of kind of giving the guys more freedom, everybody's got to be together in certain groups at certain times. And Carlos Correa, you can read that full quote yourself, but basically he's very positive about those changes and how everybody's together and closer. It felt like, this is me now to be clear. It felt like at the end of last year, there was definitely some friction between some of the guys and maybe, there were some things that were left unsaid face to face that kind of maybe came out in the media. Hard to say, hard to speculate, but there was just kind of a negative vibe between some of the guys and some of the quotes coming out. And, I think if you're trying to ease that or erase that, get everybody together as much as possible. And, maybe those things get communicated beforehand and maybe, just getting the guys together more will be better. And at least Correa is very positive about these changes to spring routines. So definitely check that out from Dan Hayes at The Athletic. There's always sort of, hope springs eternal in spring training. There's always good reason to be hopeful, but these are concrete changes that they've made to their spring training routine. And, on the one hand, it's good. It's getting guys together. I think on the other hand, the reason why things have been a little bit more loose and more relaxed is the Twins have generally kind of viewed spring training as something to get through and not wear yourself out before the season starts. More on that. And on number 3, Rocco Baldelli, when asked about Chris Paddock, so this was a response to a question directly about Paddock, but he kind of throws this out there in general. This quote is via John Bonus, who's our guy on the ground there in Fort Myers for Twins Daily right now, relaying a bunch of quotes to us writers and content producers. He says, Rocco, I'm done trying to slow guys down. Otherwise, we'd be talking about slowing everybody down, and I don't think that's the answer. So, that's a different sound from Rocco Baldelli than we're used to. Because I think, he's been at the forefront of that sort of trying to get guys rest and rotate guys and platoon guys and not have certain players go back to back or whatever. He's really conscious about how much guys have left in the tank and not pushing guys too hard and not injuring guys. So that just stood out to me, and I haven't seen this in an article or anything yet. That was just, again, kind of filtering through some of the quotes that John has relayed to us. That really stood out as something that seemed different, a different approach from Rocco Baldelli. And, you could see maybe that really applies to Chris Paddock, who is, I think that question came up because Paddock's really pushing himself, and he's like, not holding back and really wanting, I think he threw out there that he wants to throw 200 innings this year, which obviously would be a big step for Chris Paddock, who's not been the most durable guy. So maybe if you ask Rocco about a different kind of a player, you get a different response than a veteran guy who's about to be a free agent. Of course, you're not going to be that careful about him. So take that with a grain of salt. Consider that angle there, but that just struck me as a little bit of a different tone from Rocco than we're used to. Number 4, I did a Sire Fort Myers preview over at Twins Daily. We definitely will be talking Sire Fort Myers here on the channel. But one of the things I really honed in on in that preview was the non-roster invitees who we've not had in the system previously. So I wanted to show you some highlights of those guys, just kind of get you connecting some names to faces and seeing what these guys look like on the field. Because again, if you watch this channel especially, you know the NRI guys who are in the org, the Corey Lewises, the Andrew Morrises, Junior Severino's one of them. A lot of those guys you've seen tons of highlights on the channel here. Or, if you're somebody who goes to a lot of Saints games, Huskar Inoa back in the system after we traded him away so long ago. So just kind of, again, wanting to show you some highlights of these guys. These guys all have played big league time. Not all of these highlights are from last season, but a lot of them are, including this Mike Ford home run. Mike Ford in that first base DH picture, maybe more than people realize, I think, Mike Ford. Not coming off a poor year. He ended up leaving MLB to play in Japan briefly, but had a really good 2023 season for the Mariners. He's run hot and cold, but he's a guy who can get hot and hit for a lot of power. Probably more of a DH than a first baseman these days, but Mike Ford, a guy to keep in mind. Again, just kind of wanted to help connect some faces to names there for you of those guys we're not super familiar with. And then another thing that really struck me, again, this is a tip of the cap to John Bonus once again, some information he relayed. Edouard Julien, no one's really approached him about playing first base yet, which I figured he would be in that picture, speaking of Mike Ford. But from Julien, I haven't really talked to anybody about positioning, but they've been working me at second base. I'm more worried about hitting than defense right now. I think that's probably a good approach from Edouard Julien, because if he's not hitting, he's not a major leaguer. But this is not a very good defensive player, to put it bluntly, Julien. So he's got a lot to work on. We'll put it that way. And it does seem like, from some of the other quotes, it seems like maybe him and maybe some of the other guys who had really nice seasons in 2023 and fell off in 2024, kind of like the feeling of being the underdog again, and being out here trying to prove themselves. So, let's hope that kind of new vibe gives Edouard Julien a new energy. But I'm surprised. I'm surprised they haven't talked to him more about playing first base more. It seems like he fits into that picture much better than second base. Maybe I'm reading that all wrong, but, Brooks Lee, penciling him in as a starter at second base with Willie Castro, expecting him to play there a bunch. Maybe that's not the picture rolling into opening day. I don't know. Don't want to read too much into any of that, but I do find it interesting that Julien is not being worked in at first base at the moment, because to me, that seems like he would fit in the best spot, and he's not an outstanding defensive second baseman. He's worked tremendously hard, though, to his credit, but he's still, I wouldn't take him there defensively over Brooks Lee or Willie Castro, or there's probably some other names in that mix I would take over Edouard Julien defensively. But, his focus is on hitting. Hard to argue with that being the case, but yeah, Julian's got a lot to work out this spring. It's a huge, huge spring for him and quite a few other twins. So what do you think about all that? Do you have any questions? Anything to add on those? What are some things? These are, again, that's my kind of handful of takeaways that I've pulled out that have been interesting or I feel important from spring training. But if you've got other topics that have caught your eye or ear, let me know. But thanks for checking this one out. Really appreciate you. Reminder that the Prospect Zine is available for purchase in my Ko-Fi shop, or Ko-Fi shop, excuse me. I'll put a link in the description to that one as well. But we will talk again soon.